You should be doing this one thing to your tomatoes, regardless of how you're growing them, whether you're single stemming them, putting them in a cage, letting them free range, Florida weave, it doesn't matter. You should be doing this one thing. What is that one thing? Let's go. That one thing is removing lower foliage. I cannot tell you how much of a difference maker this has been for me throughout my entire gardening career. And I've grown tomatoes in all the different ways possible. I've grown them in a greenhouse. I've grown them in raised beds. I've grown them up a trellis. I've grown them on a stake. I've Florida weaved them. I've let them grow wild just like this because these are determinants and they just are super bushy and low to the ground. And so their center of gravity keeps them pretty well stabilized here, but they look like a wild mess, and that's because they are a little bit of a wild mess, but they're gonna grow a bunch of tomatoes. I'm gonna harvest them, and I'm not gonna worry that they're not even really trellised. This is a trellising method all in itself. But regardless of all of those methods, the one thing that I have realized makes the biggest difference to not only plant health and yield, but also just overall making a healthier, happier garden is removing your lower leaves. Why is that? Well, when you remove your lower leaves on your tomatoes, you're going to do a few things. The first thing is you're going to expose the fruit to sunlight. If you have a bunch of fruit and it's very densely leafed like this, there's a lot of dense foliage, you're going to notice that sunlight does not penetrate that canopy too well, and it has a hard time ripening up fruit. You'll notice your tomatoes are green well through July. It'll be August, and you'll say, man, my tomatoes are just not ripening. Well, that's why. Sunlight just can't penetrate down. So by removing this lower foliage can really help to increase sun exposure and ripening fruit. Second thing it does, we talk about this a lot, is it helps to increase airflow. It is so important when you have this much foliage, it is so important that you come in here and remove these lower leaves. How much? We'll talk about that in a second. But when you remove these lower leaves, it lets airflow into the lower portions of the plant, which are more likely to contract disease like blight early on. And then that spreads through the plant like wildfire because they're touching the soil. They're near the base of the plant where it stays a lot damper longer, doesn't dry out as fast. The air cuts through here, no problem. But when you're down low like that, it just doesn't dry out. And so what you want to do is come in here and remove all this lower foliage. The third thing that removing all this foliage does is it allows you to see what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally harvested a green tomato or broken the wrong branch because I don't really know what I'm pulling here when there's so much foliage. And you can easily break the wrong stem. You can easily break fruit off. It's just so much easier to look and maintain your plant. Look at and maintain your plant because there's less foliage here. And I'm just coming in and I'm removing all these lower leaves. Now the question is, and I know you're gonna ask this, well, how high do I wanna prune my plants up? That really comes down to personal preference. There's no, I guess, right or wrong way, as long as you're removing foliage. Some gardeners will remove them as the plant grows, so basically continually pruning. They'll never have a stopping point. Other gardeners will simply say, prune the first set of leaves that are touching the ground. Anything else is fine. I have found kind of a Goldilocks scenario. You know, the first set of leaves is great, but I tend to want a little bit more. Continually pruning leaves the plant, in my opinion, feeling a little bit naked, a little bit bare. And so I tend to go not quite that far, but I will prune roughly about 10 to 12 inches, I'd say. I usually will prune up until the first set of flowers. So as you can see, there's some fruit forming here. And so I will typically prune all these leaves up to this first set of fruit. And that's what I've found to work really well for me. Is it going to work the best for you? I don't know. I'm not sure. But what I can say definitively is that removing foliage, regardless of how much you remove, that removing foliage will absolutely have a positive impact on your plant. Your garden will overall thank you for it, and you're going to have a much more productive garden because of it. All this foliage down here really, truly just, it clogs airflow, leads to disease. Your fruit takes a lot longer to ripen. And lastly, as well, is I do think that there's a tad bit of stress involved when you have leaves that are not exposed to sunlight. Those leaves are trying to photosynthesize, and ultimately the plant has to decide, do I keep them on, do I cut them off, what do I do? And those stressed leaves are always the leaves that turn yellow, die the first, and those are usually then what leads to disease later on, like blight. I just tend to find that my garden is much, much happier by removing those lower leaves. On this plant here, you can really see what I was talking about. So I haven't come through here and removed these leaves yet, and that's why I'm coming through here and doing it, but it also gave me a great opportunity to show you why it's important. So look at these lower leaves here that are not exposed to sunlight. I don't know about you, but that does not look like a healthy leaf. It looks like a leaf that is stressed and is struggling. And the reason why it's struggling is because it just can't access sunlight. And eventually the plant will drop them off. But like that right there is a recipe for blight and disease. It just is. There's no other way around it. And so once you remove that, you're going to find that there's obviously much less of a catalyst for disease. And your plant is going to be up off the ground, allowing for better airflow underneath the plant. Now, the final reason why pruning your plants up is a good thing has to do with pest reduction. Anytime you have got a plant that is just sitting right on the ground, you have big leaves creating shade and holding moisture near the soil. And so if you have ever had a problem with earwigs, slugs, big problem with slugs, that's in our inbox all the time. Luke, my slugs are taking my tomatoes out faster than I can possibly grow them. What am I doing wrong? First thing I always go to is, have you pruned your plants up? Because when they're down to the ground like this and these leaves are just touching the soil, it is protecting the soil from the sun, it's protecting the soil from drying out, and slugs love a dark, damp environment. Earwigs like a dark, damp environment. Same thing with picnic bugs, picnic beetles. Now you might never have actually encountered a picnic beetle, but picnic beetles come in especially if you have a slight crack in your fruit, if you've gone through infrequent watering and it was a little dry, you got a bunch of rain, sometimes your tomatoes will crack. And the tomato cracking allows for the picnic beetles to come in and enjoy that sweet fruit as it's ripening. And they will just ruin some tomatoes. They're a little black beetle, and maybe they're not technically called picnic beetles, but that's what we've always called them. And they're a recipe for ruined tomatoes. And I've found them more often than not on foliage that's just too dense, because the tomatoes, they stay down there, the picnic beetles find them, and ultimately they just get to them and eat them up. And so that is why you should be pruning your tomatoes up. I know it's a quick video. I know it's a simple video. And I know a lot of you probably have already heard all of the benefits of pruning up your tomatoes. But for the number of people that write in and the resolution for what they're writing in about, whether it's blight, whether it's improperly ripening fruit, whether it's pests like slugs, the litany of things that people write in about with problems with their tomatoes, you'd be shocked. And the reason why I'm not surprised if you've benefited something from this video is because I'd say probably 90% of the people writing in, 90%, have had their problems resolved or mostly resolved by simply starting at removing that lower foliage up to about a foot off the plant, 10 to 12 inches off the plant, from the ground to the top, to the next set of leaves. Everything else removed. That is what resolves probably 90% of the problems that people write in with. And so I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. I really do hope that you will try removing some of that lower foliage off of your plants. And again, regardless of your gardening style, regardless of how you're growing your tomatoes, everyone will benefit from this. And also let me know in the comments box down below, if you remove the foliage on your tomatoes, the benefits that you've seen, to maybe encourage other people that are on the fence about being, a tomato defoliator. It sounds bad. It's a good thing, I promise. But maybe if they're on the fence about being a tomato defoliator, they'll get off the fence. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, catch you all later on the next episode. Grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting migardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care. Bye.